And now, the devil in the details, as they say. It is difficult to fully judge the value of this new tax and spending proposal without seeing it and hearing from the experts on it. A few things we do know, though. It raises taxes on corporations. It lowers the cost of prescription drugs. And it includes the largest government investment yet in dealing with climate change. Fortunately, today we are joined now by Brandon Arnold from the National Taxpayers Union, who can shed some more light on it. Welcome to Centerpoint, Brandon. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's start with the broadest picture in all of this. One thing that's troublesome to a lot of Americans, I believe, is that it was passed through the budget reconciliation process, which means that it bypasses the Senate's 60-vote threshold for a simple majority vote, meaning that it took just 51 votes, the tie-breaking vote cast by the Vice President of the United States, to get this thing done, which ensures that probably pretty close to half the country doesn't want to see it to start with. It's shades of Obamacare in that sense.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. You know, you have a very unpopular president kind of leading the charge here right now. Obama's numbers are in the tank. Congressional Democrats' numbers aren't much better. Yet here they are with a massive economy-changing package here, not dissimilar from the American Rescue Plan Act, which was passed by a similar party line vote using the reconciliation process early last year. Of course, that product turned out to be disastrous. It increased inflation to the tune of about 3 percentage points. I don't think this is going to be as negative when it comes to inflation, but it will hurt our economy and it will hurt everyday Americans, taxpayers that are counting from something better from this government at a time of great uncertainty.
Well, let's dive into the weeds a little bit on here. It includes a creation of a 15% corporate minimum tax rate. The administration is very keen to say that this is a corporate tax rate that will not affect daily middle-class Americans. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think that's entirely true. This is a huge corporate tax increase, $258 billion over 10 years. But when you raise taxes on corporations, economic evidence show that manifests itself in the form of lower wages for their workers and higher prices for consumers. Now, if the point of this is to drive down inflation, this is going to be pointed in the opposite direction in a lot of ways. When we see higher corporate taxes, again, prices for consumer goods tend to go up. And in the case of this particular legislation, the industries that are going to be hit the hardest are the manufacturing sector in this country. And of course, we're trying to work very hard to promote our manufacturing sector to have, stronger global presence for our American companies. And the other industry that's going to be hurt really badly is is utilities. And we all know that utility prices have gone through the roof. Energy prices across the board have gone through the roof. So raising taxes on utility companies right now is only going to put upward pressure on your monthly utility bill. That's a bad thing for everyday Americans.
Now, we have seen gasoline prices drop somewhat over the past several weeks. Do you expect them to go back up again as a result of this legislation? Should the House pass it, by the way? We need to make that clear. The House has not yet acted, but we do expect passage there.
We certainly do expect passage. Unfortunately, some of the moderate Democrats and folks that we thought might put up a fight against this bill have folded like a cheap suit. So we do expect this to pass on Friday. Will it alleviate gasoline prices? I don't think so. This increases taxes on imported gasoline. It increases royalty rates for oil and gas extraction domestically. And again, that corporate tax provision will raise taxes on utilities and other energy companies. So I don't see much in this bill that's going to put downward pressure on gasoline prices. The goal, of course, is to shift people into alternative forms of transportation and to utilize renewable energy to a greater extent. In the long term, that may have some beneficial impact on the country. But right now, this let them drive Tesla's approach isn't going to do much for average Americans.
The bill also includes prescription drug price reform, the administration making the case that this allows the government to negotiate with drug companies to lower prices. Others say that this is another form of price control. Your thoughts?
Yeah, these prescription drug provisions, they sound good on paper, but they are in fact price controls. And price controls have never worked in the history of mankind. They have never worked, and they'll never work in this context either. In fact, if you look at some of the economic research out there by the Congressional Budget Office and others, not only will it reduce the number of new drugs that come to market, it could increase the price of new drugs. So you will see a little bit of reduction for certain drugs increases in prices for other drugs. And of course, none of this will take effect until 2026. So Americans that are hurting today at this time of 9% plus inflation can't expect any kind of relief, even if you believe these provisions will work until 2026.
The bill also includes a provision to increase the tax collection force of the Internal Revenue Service by 87,000 people, virtually doubling its size. Now, I think most people agree that we want people to pay their fair share of taxes. That's your obligation to this country, and I think most people are willing to do it. But it's also naive, correct me if I'm wrong, to suspect that the IRS has never been used to target political opponents in this country. We have a rich history of targeting political opponents in this country through the IRS. Your thoughts?
Yes, the IRS has been a rogue agency for years, and we saw that in the targeting of conservative groups several years ago under Lois Lerner in the Obama administration. And guess what? People on the left right now are very concerned about some auditing of certain enemies of the Trump administration and McCabe and Comey. So it kind of works both ways here. What we need to do is rein in the IRS, make sure it does its job appropriately and doesn't engage itself in political antics like these, because they have huge implications for the integrity of the agency. So do we need to improve the IRS? Yes. It's literally about 20 million unprocessed tax returns sitting at the agency right now. We need to get those returns processed. We need to move these antiquated systems into the modern era so they can do things more quickly and more efficiently, so they can answer the phone. Right now, they're only picking up the phone to answer questions about 1 out of 10 times. That is completely unacceptable. But these audit provisions in this bill are completely misguided, because instead of fixing these core problems, instead of fixing the broken agency, it's just layering more and more cash upon it, hiring 87,000 new IRS agents that are going to harass not just the big corporations, not just the wealthiest Americans, but small businesses, many of whom are struggling with some of the complicated deductions that were put into place in 2017 and have been modified several times, as well as lower income folks who are dealing with complicated provisions like the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. Those provisions have very high error rates. We need to make sure those taxpayers get the assistance that they need. We don't necessarily need to send the IRS auditors after them.
And last but not least, the bill allegedly provides for increased energy security and climate change investments. I'm curious about this because we're seeing in real time now how Europe is really suffering the effects of their quick transition to renewables. Germany is now entertaining again the thoughts of building new nuclear powered plants because they're suffering the consequences of this embargo on natural gas on the part of Russia and their quick transition to renewables. Are we in for the same picture here in the United States?
I think you raise a very, very concerning point right there, because absolutely, when we want to have cleaner energy, we want to make sure our water is safe and drinkable, our air is clean and breathable, but we can only move so fast. We can only move so fast, as fast as the technology will allow us to. Simply ramming hundreds of billions of dollars into certain industries isn't necessarily going to bring about technological advances as quickly as we'd like. So we need to move at an appropriate pace as we shift away from fossil fuels to cleaner energy sources. I don't think the government is going to be leading the charge here. It's going to be the private sector. So just saying, here's $7,500 to go out and buy a Tesla and to put away your Chevy Camaro isn't going to work for average Americans. First of all, we don't have enough Teslas to put everybody in. Second, people can't afford them currently. And $7,500. That's actually going to drive up the price point in many cases and lead to price increases and inflation in the automobile market, which has been one of the most impacted industries when it comes to inflation for the past 2 years.
Brandon Arnold, the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, really appreciate your perspective, sir. Thanks for taking some time with us.
Thank you for having me.